All right, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to the meeting of the Mayor and Council for August 9th. The time is 6 p.m., and I'll call this meeting to order. In just a moment, I'm going to ask Pastor Tyler Brown to come up. I'm going to read a little bio about him first. I'm going to ask him to come up and give the invocation, and that'll be followed by Officer Anthony Allen, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So let me first introduce Pastor Tyler Brown. Pastor Tyler Brown is married to Shelby, and they are blessed with two sons, Evan and Corey, serving on staff at First Baptist Church, Atlanta. Tyler was asked to plant a church in Villa Rica, West Hills Church, with a team of 3 pastors, their families, and many volunteers. Was planted over 17 years ago in Villa Rica. Thank you for being here, sir. And let me introduce Officer Allen. Anthony Allen grew up in Carroll County. He went to Villa Rica High School and graduated in 2004. Anthony went to college at Jacksonville State University. Anthony joined the United States Marines in 2010, and in 2012, Anthony joined the Marine Security Guard, in which he protected the United States embassies throughout the world. Anthony left the Marines in 2015 and has been with Villa Rica Police Department ever since. Thank you for your service, sir. Okay, if you'll all rise, I'll ask the pastor to come up and lead us in the invocation. Sir, right up here at the podium, please.
Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for allowing us to gather here tonight to do business on behalf of our city and our people, Father. And I pray for those in charge. I pray for our mayor, our city council, all of our government, state, and federal representatives, Father, that you would bless them with discernment and discipline. I pray, God, that you would give them wisdom to make right choices that would honor you and benefit us all. We pray for justice, and above all, I pray, Father, that our leaders would work and minister and serve in love. I pray for our community, God, that the needs of our community will be met. I pray, God, for health and joy and peace, and above all, unity as we live together. Protect our police officers, our firemen, all that serve our community. Father, we pray for protection for them. We pray for blessings for us all. And I pray, God, above all else, that we would trust you. And your words you say, Jesus says that I've told you that in this world you will face trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And Father, I pray that we get and we understand that we need you. More than ever, we need you. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I don't know if this is out of order or not, but I'll take it in the order we've got it. So the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes or modifications to this agenda? If there's not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented by Mr. Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Mr. Montahan. All in favor? All right, we'll adopt the agenda. I do think that's probably supposed to be down a little bit. Okay, so we're going to move on to ceremonial presentations, and we are privileged tonight to have with us Jay Collins, who is the Georgia House Representative for District 7-1. He's also the former mayor here of Villa Rica for more than 12 years. Was it closer to 16? I can't remember. 4 4-year terms and resigned in that last one. So we want to welcome you here. He's here to recognize a very special member of our community tonight that we all are proud to call a friend here for the city of Villa Rica, Mr. Michael Valentine. So, Jay, if you would come up, I would give you the floor, sir.
Well, Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me to come and present this privileged resolution to such a great member of our community. It's always good to be in the council chambers. Many of you I served with for a number of years, and I love Villa Rica, and I said the day that I resigned to seek this House seat that the best days of Villa Rica were still in front of her. And I truly, truly mean that. What a blessing it's been to grow up in this community, to build a business in this community, but to see new people come in, people who weren't born and raised here, who come into our community and they jump right in and make themselves a part of this community, and they give. And I can't think of anyone who has given more during the time I've known him here in our community than Mr. Michael Valentine. I first met Michael at a council meeting, I believe, and he has been involved in taking photographs for the rec department, for different city affairs, for the gymnastics, West Georgia Gymnastics here, during the parades that we have. We have the annual 4th of July Independence Day fireworks that he so graciously comes out and video takes photographs of, and people put videos together based on his photographs. Numerous events in this community that he gives selflessly of his time, and we're just very grateful to that. And personally, I can tell you that I have a lot of photographs of my 10-year-old girl that he took from different events, and I'm not the only person. He hundreds and thousands of people that he captures these moments that we will never forget, and that I will treasure, and these families in our community will treasure forever. He does this out of the goodness of his heart, just to be supportive of the community. And you know, no matter what community you live in, Mayor, you got to have community spirit. And he captures that community spirit, and he puts it on display for everyone to see. And without him, you know, I don't know that our community would be as spiritful as it is today. So I'd like to read this House resolution, if I may, and ask Mr. Valentine if he'd like to join me, if that'd be okay, Mayor,
Absolutely.
to have him
Come on
join
up,
me here
sir.
at the podium. House Resolution 1067 by State Representative Jay Collins of the 68th, Representative Gravely of the 67th, Representative Hatchett of the 150th, and the Dean of the House, Dean Calvin Smyrie of the 135th. A resolution recognizing and commending Michael Valentine and for other purposes. Whereas Michael Valentine has a long and consistent record of service to this community and this state, and has been recognized as one of the most dynamic photographers in Villa Rica, Georgia. Whereas this outstanding citizen has had a tremendous impact on his community through his spirit of service in the Villa Rica area, and whereas Michael found his passion of photography early in his adult life, photographing his sons as they play sports on a variety of teams and sharing photos of the team among the families and teammates. Whereas he later moved to digital images, which inspired him to create a website where he would post his photos for family and friends to enjoy. And whereas Michael has captured memorable moments of life at home in Villa Rica, where he and his wife Kathleen moved following their retirement, photographing concerts at the Mill Amphitheater, civic gatherings and other activities and events in the area, sharing all with the citizens of the community. Whereas his joy, talent, and passion for his work is evident to all who have the opportunity to view it. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the remarkable talents of this extraordinary citizen be appropriately recognized, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the members of this body recognize and commend Michael Valentine for his creativity and sense of sharing, and wish him continued success and happiness. Be it further resolved that the Clerk of the House of the Representatives is authorized and directed to make a copy of this resolution available for distribution to Michael Valentine. In the House, read and adopted March 23rd, 2022, signed William Riley, Clerk of the House in the state of Georgia. Come get a picture of you. We'll get that one over here too.
They're gonna take some. Y'all wanna take a picture right here?
That's what I asked.
Let me step over out of the.
Big ones.
You're good. Puts the emblem behind him.
Yeah, let's put Michael in the middle. Mayor, if you'll come over.
Okay, sure. You can give all them some lessons.
Please allow me to say something before I sit down, and I won't try to stumble too much.
Absolutely.
But I'm the one who's blessed to be in a community that has received me the way that it has. I am blessed to be in Villa Rica. This may not be the city, the community of my birth, but this is my home. We have retired here, and I cannot think, I'd never heard of Villa Rica until my son married a local girl. and then I heard of Villa Rica. But I cannot think of a better place to be. And I'm the one who's blessed. I thank all of you for the many opportunities that you've given me to go out and take pictures, and the pleasure is mine. I know the value and the reward of pictures, to be able to go out and capture memories of your families, of your children, that I can give to you, share with you, and that you can share with others. That is my joy. That's what I enjoy doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the opportunities you've given me.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to represent the city in the People's House, the House of Representatives. That seat I sit in is not my seat. It belongs to all of you. And I appreciate the opportunity. Mayor, if I can ever help you in the city in any way, council members, you know how to get in touch with me. I want to be your voice under the Gold Dome. If I can ever be of assistance with any type of state governmental issue, I'm just a phone call away.
And I appreciate that, Jay, and you already have been very helpful to us in a number of ways, and every time we've had an issue or anything that we could use your help on, you've been right there and pretty much got it done every single time, so I appreciate that. Let me say something about Michael Valentine, though, because I appreciate that you did this, Jay, because I have long, along with all of these folks and many folks in this room, appreciated the work that Michael has done as a volunteer here in this city for years. And I have really good memories. Michael will take pictures, and I'm sure he does it for a lot of folks, and he'll send them to me. And sometimes they're not my favorite photo, but the quality of it is really good. And I have at least one, I have a lot of memories, but most recently, Michael and I went up on a helicopter on July 3rd. He was gracious, even though he was scared to death, because they took his door off, but they didn't take mine off. And he was very concerned that the seatbelt wasn't holding him in. And I put my little boy in the front, and me and Michael and another small child was in the middle. And this little kid kept saying, "We're going to crash. We're going to crash." And Michael was absolutely terrified as he leaned out and tried to get these photos that we had asked him to take. So, Michael, I want to say again, thank you for all that you do for the city, and we appreciate it. And Jay, thank you for recognizing Michael like that. Let's give him another round of applause. Okay, let me see where we're at. So we're going to be at public comment now. So I do have a list, and I'll call you out on this list. If you happen to be here for a public hearing, because there are a lot of those tonight. If you happen to be here for a public hearing and not necessarily for public comment at this time, you can just let me know when I call your name, and we'll skip you and we'll let you speak during the public hearing that you're here for. Let me say up front, please keep your comments on a professional level. We'll not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. If you deviate from this protocol, you'll receive a warning from the chair. If you deviate a second time, you'll be leaving. Only one person speaking at a time, and please, no comments from the audience. Also, please address your comments to the mayor and council, and just be sort of aware up front that we typically do not engage. I'm going to give you these whole 3 minutes to speak, and then if I have something to add, I'll do that respectfully after you've had your time. So first person up, Mary Nail. Is that person? Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Ma'am, are you here for a public hearing, or do you want to speak in public comments?
No, I don't care about speaking. I was here for hearing.
Oh, okay. All right. Elvira Maria, same thing? Okay. Sarah Caldwell. Well, this is y'all's moment to shine. What's going on? You don't want to speak? Don, I can't read this last name. Don Nunn? Okay. Bill and Jennifer Awalt. Okay, the public hearing. All right, Jeff Camp. Same thing? Public hearing? For a public hearing. Okay, well, that's the entire list. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in public comment? All right, Mr. Chief. This is Chief Michael Mansour. He's going to come up and talk about a couple things we've got going on. Did you bring those applications?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right, you got the floor, sir.
So, Mayor and Council, I appreciate you letting me speak this evening. We are hosting the Villa Rica Police Department Citizens Academy again. Obviously, we had a tough time during COVID trying to get people here, but we're getting back at it this year. We've got a lot of cool things planned. It starts August the 18th, which is a Thursday night, and it will be every Thursday night through October 20th. The programs include K-9 program. We get to go visit the jail and tour 911. We have an active shooter. You get to do vehicle pullovers where you are the police officer and you're stopping a car so you see how quickly something can happen. You don't get to bring your own gun to that. We teach you about use of force, handgun, safety. We take you to the firearms range where you get to shoot. We have people there to help you and make sure you do it right and safely. And we also have the GBI sketch artist come that people just really enjoy. She does an amazing job. So it's all free to citizens. You don't have to live in the city to come. We feed you every Thursday night. It's funny because usually people will call us and say, hey, what's going on this coming Thursday? Well, we do, and well, about the third week they're calling saying, hey, what are we eating tonight? So, but we have a great time with it. I've put applications out front here, so when you leave, pick one up. We'd love to have you. Like I said, we start next Thursday. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Let me ask you a question. You alluded earlier today that you had a few spots open. Is there a number of how many you've got?
Well, we've got 20 right now, people coming. We usually try to keep it around 30, so,
Okay.
so
if
I
you
mean,
want to sign up, there are applications here.
if you want to sign up, please get an
Probably
application.
go ahead and get in there.
And sign up. We'd love to have you. All right.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is a real popular event that the city puts on. I always get really positive comments about it, so if you have any interest in it, please sign up for that. Okay, so that'll wrap up public comments. I'm going to close the public comments portion of the meeting. I'm going to move into council updates. Are there any council members that would like to be recognized? All right, if there are none, I will close the council. Is there somebody? Oh. I'm sorry. Usually they make a sound. All right, Miss McPherson.
I mean, I didn't bring fireworks, but
Yeah, well, even a grunt would have probably. All right, go ahead.
I will say, the Citizen Academy, I popped in on a few of them when they were doing, I'm sorry. The Citizen Academy with the police department, I popped in on a few of them before I ever attended. I kept going, gotta go to that one of these times because the people really seem to enjoy it. And so my husband and I finally did set aside some time to do it. And I mean, it's really educational, but it's fun too. So you learn a lot, whether it's the sketch artists or the way they approach a crime scene, but you really gain an understanding of what they deal with on a day-to-day basis too. I came out, I didn't get shot, anything like that. And one of my favorite officers, the dog, in that case Bono, came to one of the meetings and they kind of showed him off a little bit. But anyway, if you can do it, it is worth your time. It's educational and fun. And yeah, we eat pretty good too, so. Okay, I wanted to mention, we've had an ongoing problem on Mirror Lake Boulevard and Punkintown Road, and it comes up a lot with citizens as to the trucks, the heavy-duty trucks that are on there, 6 wheels and plus. So semi-trucks, that sort of thing, because the road really wasn't built to accommodate for them. And so I had a citizen ask a question, and so this is something we're going to have to do a little better on. We had got the statistics on the citations for trucks over a year and a half, so 18 months. And the citations that were given out over that time were 97 citations, which averages 5.3 per month. So we've got to do better enforcement on that. Now, that's only one aspect. We also need better signage and everything else. But just to bring that out, because that is something we've got to step up. Lastly, on a little bit more serious note, Last year in the summer of 2021, an executive decision was made to incentivize or pay employees for getting either the Pfizer or the other shots. We were not, while it was an executive decision, Villa Rica was not alone in this. Carroll County Schools decided to do the same thing. Carrollton City Manager had the authority, also did it. Carroll County Commission did not. So for the employees to get the shot, they would also be treated differently in regard to their sick pay if they tested positive based on if they had received the shot or not. The incentive pay was paid to 87 employees, 85 for getting the shot, 1 with a religious exemption and 1 medical exemption. The city paid $30,000 as an incentive. 72 employees had already received the shot prior to the decision or the incentive offer, which means Villa Rica paid $30,000 for 15 employees to get the shots. I did not bring this up to rehash it. It is done. It's over and done with. It's in the past. However, I do believe we need to learn a lesson for the future from this. I do have a family member who's in the medical community who, because of being childbearing age and because of some of the things we knew, did get a religious exemption at her place of work and just recently had a baby. The reason I brought this up is that even last summer, there were some red flags concerning the so-called vaccination, including that it was for the previous variant by the time we'd gotten to that point, not the one the strain we were experiencing at the time. We also started to begin to see at that time that people that had received the shot, that it would not stop the infection or the transmission of the infection to others, although there were still claims that you would be less sick if you got it. I don't have all the numbers on that, but it does vary person to person. There are some people that have still gotten sick. That was also the time that they started to promote that you needed to go and get more shots and get the boosters. And there was a special concern for young people because of the fact of the risk-benefit analysis. Most young people did very well. Since that time, we have also received a lot of data from the military, which is the most closed medical group to study because they all use the same system. We started to see problems there and in other countries with myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart, especially in young men. In the military and in some of the other data from the countries, we saw an significant uptick in stillbirths, miscarriages, among other things, and more adverse reactions than all other vaccines combined over the decades. Lastly, because of the lawsuits that emerged after that and the FOIA requests that were made to Pfizer, a judge ordered them to start to release their data. We still do not have all that data because they've been allowed to release portions of it at a time. What we have found in the records they have released so far, both on their development of the vaccine and their testing data, is that they knew a number of these things ahead of time. Not only did they have very limited testing, but they were seeing myocarditis. They were seeing adverse reactions, which is very concerning. So I think the lesson for the future going forward is that my hope is that anytime anything like this comes up, that we leave it to the personal decision of the people involved, for us not to be involved one way or another in what they choose to do or not do with their health, and let them decide for themselves. And I'll close with that. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I want to give a plug to the Citizens Academy also. We took that, my wife and I did, during my first term, and it was very, very helpful. It teach you how to use the firearms. You go to the firing range. The most memorable thing about it that I can recall is on the last day or so, we had the pullover event in the basement of the Avanti building. There's a car, you're in the police car behind them, you're pulling them over. You get out of the car and approach the car. Well, as my wife was a backup. As we started approaching the car, guys piled out of that car and started shooting at us. And I held my ground, was shooting back, turned around and see how my backup was doing. She was backing up. She was a good backup, so. But she got hit, had a spot where it got past some of the padding we had on, but it lasted about a year. But she remembers that well. But it's a good course. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, anybody else? I mean, you got to come up with something. Yeah, there's only
yeah,
3 of y'all
there's only
here,
3 of
so
us.
make it a trio.
I just wanted to
Do
come discuss an ongoing issue we're having in Ward 2, particularly the Summergate neighborhood. With school back in session, the car rider line at Bay Springs, is that Bay Springs Elementary there? Couldn't remember.
Middle.
No, that's a middle. Sorry. Bay Springs Middle School often blocks the entrance into the Summergate neighborhood. So I was hoping that we would, I was working with staff and hopefully having some sort of solution to that. And hopefully we can work on that further. But in the meantime, if you are in the car rider line at Bay Springs Middle, just be cognizant to not block the entrance into the neighborhood there. Obviously, if emergency vehicles need to get in and out, it's an issue. It's also an issue for the folks. I had one constituent tell me that his son waited almost 45 minutes just to get from the intersection there, which is, probably less than 500 feet into the neighborhood that afternoon on the first day of school. So, again, hopefully we'll find a solution to that, working with staff, perhaps the school system and the county. But in the meantime, just be aware and be considerate of your neighbors. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. I will make some comment about that. I mean, not to contradict anything and not to suggest that isn't a real concern, but I mean, Eli went to school there last year, and I took him to school every day and picked him up every day. I do find that most people are conscious that they're blocking that entrance there and are pretty respectful, but I think your point's well taken, that people should pay a little bit more attention to it. So, and maybe we can find something to do there, but I don't know what. I think it'll be a little easier. You're not just talking about the first days of school, but
Sure.
obviously those first days that is a
Doors.
whole different animal altogether. So, point well taken, but I do appreciate that a lot of people most people I do think are pretty cognizant that they're blocking an entrance there. And maybe after this, they'll think about it a little bit more. Okay, all right, I'll close the council updates portion of the meeting, and I will move over to the consent agenda. So earlier today at 10 a.m., the mayor and council and staff met in a public work session in this room. It's also recorded with these cameras. You can go back and watch any of the stuff that we're about to go through. We're going to move through this really quickly. This is the consent agenda. These items were placed on this consent agenda earlier today without objection. So I'm going to go through them, and when I have finished, I'll ask if there are any objections, and if there are none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. So consent item number 1 is the insurance renewal agreements for partially self-funded medical insurance. Consent number 2, medical premiums for plan year to be effective October 1, 2022. Consent number 3, approval of temporary signage for 17th Annual Villa Rica Frontiers is Rodeo. Consent number 4, resolution regarding intergovernmental agreement for local option sales tax distribution in Carroll County. Consent number 5, contract for billboard at Butterball's property. Consent number 6, grant and acceptance of access and utility easements for Water Mist Phase 3. Consent number 7, Gold Dust Recreation Gymnasium insulation. Consent number 8, Downtown Development Authority reappointment of Ellen Wynn McBrayer. Consent number 9, Recreation Advisory Commission appointment of Michael Young. Consent number 10, Library Advisory Board appointment of Julie Dobbs. Consent number 11, Library Advisory Board appointment of Claudia Best. Consent number 12, Library Advisory Board appointment of Stephanie Baldy. Consent number 13, Three Rivers Agreement renewal. Consent number 14, in-car laptop computers. Consent number 15, Flowers Bakery culvert replacement. Consent number 16, purchase of portable bypass pump. Consent number 17, lift station supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA upgrade. Consent number 18, parks and drum screen improvements. Consent number 19, adopt a resolution authorizing participation in Georgia Fund 1 investment pool. Consent number 20, approval of work order 17003.19A with Brennan Jones to design the relocation of the Shoreline Lift Station. Consent number 21, resolution of support, Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program, application and match commitment. Consent number 22, approved utility relocation agreement with GDOT for the North Bypass. And consent number 23, fiscal year 22 budget amendments, numbers 299 through number 304. Are there any objections to any of these items? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Mr. Carter makes a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. McPherson. All in favor? All right. I do. That's helpful. All right, so we have adopted the consent agenda, and with that, we will remove 23 items from the agenda. Okay, let's go to tab B, governing body. So we are considering the approval of the minutes from council meeting minutes of May 24, 2022, and council meeting minutes of July 12, 2022. Are there any amendments to these minutes? Any changes?
Mayor, I did notice
Mr. Montahan.
On the May 24th minutes, the first paragraph at the top of page 3, the word stimulations is there a couple of times, and I think that's supposed to be stipulation, so subject to that revision, that spelling correction there.
Okay, that's the only thing you saw?
That's the
Anybody
only-
else see any changes or amendments? Okay. Let's take the 24th off. We'll bring that back to the next meeting so that you can clean up that language. Is there a motion to approve the council meeting minutes of July 12th, 2022?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the council meeting minutes of July 12th, 2022.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Montahan. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. We'll just do those May 24th at the next one, Alyssa. Okay, B2, resolution regarding intergovernmental agreement for special purpose local option sales tax distribution for Douglas County. Did we not? Okay. So, David, do you have this language corrected?
Yes.
Or updated, sorry.
I sent to you the, the most recent draft of it that I received late this afternoon. Emailed it to all of you directly. It says what we think it's supposed to say. Provides for the city of Villa Rica to receive a 5.04 share of the distribution of the Douglas County sales tax for the next 6 years.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't adopt this tonight?
No.
Okay. All right, so there are two parts to this motion. Does anybody have it pulled up?
Yeah, I have it.
All right. Is there any discussion, any questions for David?
Yeah, you're only going to be moving one of the parts, not
Which
both
one?
of them.
Yeah, one of them is to approve it,
The
and the
one
other
to
one
approve it.
is to hold off.
Because the other is negotiated.
I got you.
and then we-
Okay. All right, so any questions for David before we do a motion? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
All right. I move to approve the resolution regarding the intergovernmental agreement for special purpose local option sales tax distribution as attached to this cover sheet and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the same.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Ms. McPherson. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, thank you, and thank you, David. So let me go back now and see where we're at. We're going to move into this hefty load of public hearings.
Like the police reimbursement.
Oh, do I still have that? Where's that at?
It's on the.
It is,
Yeah.
it's not on my paper.
Right,
It
it's
is
not on
on the
paper.
screen. All right, give me a second. I thought I saw something else. Okay, Mr. Mansour, please come up. This is consideration of an item that we looked at earlier that was not able to be placed on the consent agenda because there was an objection. So if you'll come up and reintroduce this item for us.
Well, this is the new one that he mentioned about.
Oh, this is a
the-
grant.
The grant, not the objection.
Oh, this is not that item?
It's the grant.
Yeah, they need it by the 15th.
This is, okay, it's not on, which one is it?
It's the police grant reimbursement.
Refresh your screen.
No, I see it on the
Yeah,
screen.
but it's not on the agenda.
It's not on
I
the
don't think.
paper.
No, we ran out of time and didn't have time to put it on there.
I understand.
But it's in
Yeah.
City Park.
Okay, all right. So, come on up. This is the Police Department Reimbursement Grant Program. Do you want to talk about that? Yes. Okay, come on up and do that one. I'm sorry. It's a little confusing. All right, go ahead. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. This is the grant that we're trying to get through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. It is a grant request where we're trying to get equipment. The equipment that we'll be getting will be a FATS machine. The FATS machine is used to do scenarios for the officers. They will have different options on what they do during the scenarios. If they can use a taser, they can use a baton, they can use pepper spray. There's all kinds of different scenarios that they can do. But it's basically to teach them shoot, don't shoot situations. Somebody may, run up to them with something in their hand, and the officers have to decide whether it's a weapon or phone or whatever. So it's all kinds of different scenarios like that, and it's a really cool program. We also use it for our Citizens Academy when we have one. We received one, I guess it was a couple years ago, from the Academy, because I'm on the board at the Academy in Austell, and it worked for a while and did really good, and then it's so old you really can't upgrade it or fix it. So we're looking to get it through this grant.
Okay, so really, and I've just been refreshed on my memory here. So this is a not to exceed grant. It's dollar for dollar, and
Yes,
it's for many of the items that you just talked about. Not to exceed $47,021.60. We talked about this earlier today, and we didn't have the numbers, but you thought you could do a not to exceed. Okay, Council, do you have any questions for the chief?
So this is really,
Mr. Carter.
You're asking the council to loan you some money until you get it back from grant. Is that?
That's correct. Basically, you're giving me permission. You're giving me permission to apply for this grant with the understanding that we will front the money until we're reimbursed.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, anybody else? Okay. If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to support the police department's proposed grant purchases and provide initial funding not to exceed $47,021.60.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Ms. McPherson. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now let me see where we're at. Is there any more conflicts between the paper and the? No. Okay. Okay, am I ready for these public hearings now? Okay. All right. So let the fun begin. C1, VA-08-22, Ridge Coal, Villa Trace Apartments, Stream Buffer Variance. There'll be a public hearing on this item. I'm going to ask staff, which is Ron Johnson, to introduce this item, and we'll go from there. Ron, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Ridge Coal is requesting a variance to encroach 608 square feet into the 75-foot stream buffer. That's the city's buffer. In order to construct a retaining wall, there will be a functional aspect to this. According to the applicant, it would allow for small backyard spaces for the tenants, in addition to better utilization of some of the land that's more towards the front of the development. So this is a 48-unit apartment complex located within the MF1 zone, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay, so on this item, staff is recommending approval. Council, do you have any questions for Ron? All right, no questions for Ron. Is the applicant here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Davis, if you will come up. Yeah, sure. Come on up. We'll give you an opportunity just to speak and to, we'll see if the council has any questions for you before I do a public hearing.
All right. Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. Jay Davis, 55 Goldworth Road. Not acting as legal counsel tonight. I'm merely an agent for the folks that we're representing here. Mr. Cole, we brought the engineer here from the engineering services company. The purpose of the retaining walls and the encroachment in the setback is to allow the tenants of the zoned multifamily units to have an actual backyard that doesn't slope like this. It'll allow for better drain off. It will keep the actual earth from wearing away from rain damage and so forth. And if we have specific engineering questions, engineers here, if you have specific questions for the applicant, I'm able to bring him up. But the entire purpose of it is to make the community more user-friendly for the residents. That's
Okay.
it.
Is there any questions for all right, Mr. Carter?
What kind of retaining wall do you plan to construct?
Alex, would you please step up? Introduce yourself first.
My name is Alex Vaughton. I work with Southeast Civil Group. We're the design firm for this project. There's a couple of different ways that Ridge could build this wall, but how we're proposing it is a concrete retaining wall. It's inside the impervious setback. I would like to note that the intent of a setback on a creek is to protect the creek, right? So you have undisturbed buffers where it keeps the trees and it keeps the roots so that erosion doesn't happen and the creek is maintained, right? The purpose of an impervious setback is to not put asphalt or a building or pavement inside that close to the creek, right? A retaining wall is actually a grade stabilizer, so it helps to support the integrity of the creek. So it's the intent of the impervious setback is to keep impervious area out of it. The concern that the city had is that this wall is 1 foot wide, and so there's a 1 foot section of exposed impervious area within the impervious setback, and so that's the concern.
Is this a poured concrete wall? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else?
I just say that
Ms. McPherson?
the report was thorough, and staff made it obvious that it was minimally invasive and at the same time gave a better product for the people living there. So I don't see where there's a health, safety, concern issue, ecological. I'm good. So.
Okay. I'm going to do a public hearing. Is there anybody else for the applicant before I? All right. If y'all would just step to the side.
Question, are these for anybody?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can't throw them.
I will not. I even took a bruised one in my salad.
All right. So I'm going to do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this variance application? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. We'll go back to staff. Is there somebody? You want to speak for or against it?
I don't know. My name is Bill.
Well, let's do this. Come up here, give us your name and address for the record, and then we'll see what you got to say.
My name is Bill Awalt, and I live at 301 Villa Trace,
Okay.
Rica, Georgia. We received a letter saying that our property was right across the street from wherever they're going to do this. Okay, I'm blind. I'm not blind, but I'm working with no information, no sketch, no understanding of what's going on. Okay, my question is this a new construction, or is this existing, or how does it affect my property? I mean, I received this letter, I'm just showing up. And I'm asking these questions because I haven't a clue. Probably don't have any say about it, but I'd kind of like to know.
Well, okay. So typically how this would work, and I understand that you don't know enough about what you're talking about. I respect that. I usually would just let you say whatever you need to say, and then I would let staff maybe try to address anything that you might have said. But here I'm just going to, while you're standing there, I'm just going to let staff try to answer that question for you because you came up here today and you didn't really have any information. So, Ron, would you come up and answer that question for him?
Mayor?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, sure. Do we have this? Do we have the?
We have a site plan.
There it is.
So this is new construction?
Yes, sir. So the applicant in this case is proposing a 48-unit apartment complex stretched across 3 different buildings here that you see on the site.
Can you help orient him where it is? You can come up, Ron, if
Absolutely.
you need to.
Sure, absolutely.
Just to help him understand where he's.
So this is Villa Trace here.
Yeah.
This is a side street coming out, so your Bankhead Highway would be in this direction here
I got
to the
you.
south. And this would be the dead end of Village Trees as we know it today.
Okay,
So this is
coming
that
all the way
vacant lot
down.
that's wooded, that's on the one side of Village Trees that we have.
Will it be on that side of the creek or just on this side of the creek?
The entire property incorporates the creek, which runs directly through the center of it. So you can see the property line up here, the dark line going
Yeah.
around. So this is a shot looking towards the east. The east is that way. So
Okay.
the creek is right in the center, but all the buildings will be on this side. The rest will be undisturbed.
Point out the two walls, Ron.
Yes, and the lines that you see here in red going around are the lines of where the retaining wall would be. So that's specifically what we're talking about, being that this is a permitted use in the zone.
How close does the parking lot come to the existing road now?
This parking lot here,
Yes.
I can't read, it's supposed
Our
to be a.
homes are on the other side of the road.
I believe it's a.
And right now, all it is just trees.
Okay.
I believe it's a.
All right. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity because I know it can be a little overwhelming when you don't know. But I would say to the public that anytime you see these signs going up or you get these letters, call somebody down at City Hall. They'll get you in touch with somebody. It really is probably going to be Ron, but it might not be. It just depends on what your question is. I know it can be a lot to come up here and not really know this process. So I hope that answered your question. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Ron, come back up. Council, do you have any questions for Ron or the applicant at this time? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll do it.
All right,
Let me click. Sorry.
all right.
I got it up.
Okay. I move to approve the variance request by Rich Cole of Villa Rica, Georgia, to encroach into the city's 75-foot stream buffer by 608 square feet.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Montahan to approve the variance request by Ridge Cole of Villa Rica, Georgia, to encroach into the city's 75-foot stream buffer by 608 square feet. That motion is seconded by Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that will pass. Okay, we're going to move on to VA-10-22. Benchmark United, Inc. of Douglasville, Georgia, has requested 3 variances from Section 7, Development Standards, and 1 variance from Section 9.046B, Non-Residential Design Standards of the Villa Rica Zoning Ordinance at 108 Boggs Road. We'll also have a public hearing on this item. Will you go ahead and pull up the supporting packet for this? Thank you, sir. Have a good night. All right, go ahead, Ron. Introduce this item.
Yes, sir. Benchmark United is looking for 3 variances tonight. The 4th variance request here, which is from Section 9.046B, has been removed from consideration, being that the City Council had passed at the previous meeting a change to this section, so where it's no longer applicable. Detailing these here, and the overall project is for a warehouse and office facility. The applicant is looking to subdivide the lot into a 5-acre parcel and construct a 12,000 square foot building. About approximately 10,100 square feet of that is to be warehouse space. And the City Council also has granted a variance in April of 2022 for a side yard setback reduction from 50 foot to 20 foot for 1 side yard. The applicant is looking at requesting variances from Section 7.03C, which requires no more than 50% of required parking in the front of the structure, whereas 100% is proposed. Table 7.5, which requires a 20-foot drive entrance length, whereas 10 feet is proposed. And Section 7.025, which requires all parking areas to be a hard dust-free surface, whereas the applicant is proposing a gravel parking lot in the rear of the building. Staff recommended denial for all 3 of these variances. We look at this as self-imposed hardship. We couldn't identify any other topographic or any other reasons as to why these individual variances essentially should be granted. We did work with the applicant for the past, say, 2 weeks or so in trying to come up with a better plan, and that's why one of the 4 variances was also removed from consideration as well. The applicant was able to take into account some of our questions and some of the things that we were able to recommend to him to have a better plan. And I do thank the applicant for that, but he was left with these 3 that he would still need approval for.
Okay. So let's do this. So we introduced these items earlier today, but we didn't get much into them. Is there any questions for staff at this point? Ms. McPherson?
Yeah, remind me the one that was removed out of the 4
It's
initial requested variances?
Yes, it was section 9.046B. This is the one that required all buildings with a width of over 90 feet to provide a projection from the building wall. It must be at least 2 feet deep over intervals of 60 feet.
Okay, because they were going to provide it on the front but didn't want to provide it on the back. There was an issue, so y'all came to an agreement on that.
Correct, yes.
Okay, about it being in the way or whatever. Okay, well, I spoke mainly to the department head, Tracy, yesterday, very briefly to the city manager on this. Am I allowed to ask Tracy questions?
Sure.
Since he's-
Tracy, you want to come on
Okay.
up? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the items has to do with the small area in the back with the gravel, what we might call parking, or where they're going to keep equipment or whatever, and we usually want everything paved. But my question is this, even with, and Bobby handled that one, even when we did East-West Express, and we made them have the concrete drive come in, concrete apron around the building, where the trucks loaded and unloaded, we decided that there wasn't anything bad about having those trucks sitting on rock, gravel, and that it might even be an advantage to not have as much stormwater drain off, and that it actually be, pervious rather impervious. So what's our big issue, being that this is in an industrial area, not a shop downtown?
I think the big issue is our ordinance requires it. So, I mean, that, to me, that's the only reason we're recommending denial, because there's no real hardship here to, I mean, there's not that big of an area that could be paved. And I understand when I look at things from a building aspect of it, I see where the gravel has its benefits also, like we had talked about it with East-West Express and whatnot. But I think as far as staff is concerned, that it wouldn't be that hard to put in a paved section to park their equipment on back there.
Okay, and I don't care who, I mean, if somebody else wants to give input, Ron, or you, whatever. The purpose of this is what? In other words, there's a reason we have variances.
Right.
We have variances because we think practically sometime it might be better to go a different way. So is the idea behind having everything paved, is it for aesthetics? Because we're talking about an industrial area on a dead-end road, and it's behind a building. That's different than they're going to come down and build a barbecue place over here, and they're going to put in a gravel parking lot. If the intent of the ordinance is mainly aesthetics, then I don't see a reason not to grant the variance. I'm trying to get you to argue and convince me that that needs to be paved, and it doesn't have to be you. I mean, Ron, you may want to speak to it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue the point, because that's why we bring it before the council for your wisdom and you guys to decide, what you think's the best for the city. We just recommend as the way we see the ordinance and how we interpret it and whatnot, yes.
Okay, so Ron, what is the purpose of everything being paved, except in some cases we've allowed it, like East-West Express and...
So I think you're going to get a different answer depending on who you ask. So if you ask a planner, or if you ask an engineer, and if you ask a construction official, you're probably going to get a different answer for that. From a planner's perspective, and probably some engineers, I believe that water runoff is much better controlled on being that we probably have obviously drainage ditches, and there's retention on site, and things of that nature, detention probably on site. So I would much rather see a paved actual surface that's leading to one of those retention ponds, or drainage ditch, or wherever our city engineer allows it to go. I personally, and professionally, have issues with non-paved surfaces and the maintenance of those. I think we talked a little bit about that with the East-West Express hearing as well. Eventually the gravel gets compacted. And we've all been in a gravel parking lot before where it's missing gravel, and that happens very quickly, relatively quickly, after heavy machinery or trucks or what have you is on the site for a X amount of time. So over time, you're eventually going to run out of gravel, and then you have the situation of essentially chasing after the property owner, basically, to put down more gravel, and oftentimes that doesn't happen, and it just turns into essentially dirt.
Okay, so it's not a public parking lot. Well, maybe the applicant can speak to it too. It is a small area, it could deteriorate, and it would be their issue if it did. Is there a problem ecologically with the water that way, or?
Yeah, of course there's, being that this is going to be parking for trucks, there's probably going to be oil and grease runoff and things of that nature, and that would seep through the gravel. It wouldn't run off, it would go through the gravel. And especially after rains, and we get a lot of torrential rains here in West Georgia, so that process of it getting that oil and dirt getting into a site is probably much more rapid than other places around the country. So of course soil types and things of that nature comes into play. How much oil, how much gas, or et cetera, whatever is going into the ground. But this is how we get what we call brownfield sites eventually, where a site is polluted to the point where it needs to be actually cleaned up, which is in some cases $1 million plus project.
Okay, so it's either going to drain directly into our stormwater with whatever's coming out of those trucks,
Or groundwater.
or it's going to work its way through the ground. And I'm not a specialist on this, and I don't know if Bobby can speak any more to it because he was involved with the East-West Express. But I don't want to spend all night on this one. I sweat these things when we tell people what they can and cannot do with their property, and I think we have a role in it. I just want to be convinced that we have a reason for doing it.
Sure.
So I don't know if Bobby can speak at all, because if that's a problem here, then it should be a problem in the other instance where we allowed them to put trucks, semi-trucks, on rock and gravel.
Right, and like I said, you're probably going to get different answers depending on, we all come from a different school of thought, so.
It makes it hard for us
chances
though,
are-
right? If we're going to get different.
I think one thing, though, that probably we should not lose sight of is exactly what Tracy has said from the beginning, and I haven't, I remember the East-West situation very well because that turned out to be a tie vote, and I ended up having to be involved in that one in a different way, and I knew then that someday that would come back. But I think the point is that if the ordinance requires it, that is a pretty significant consideration. And if we're going to just vary them, then we probably should just modify the ordinance and forget all about it. I mean, that's not really to argue. It's just that I think that's what staff is trying to say, is that there are a lot of reasons, and everybody has their own sort of reasons, but the bottom line is the ordinance says that this is not allowed, and therefore that's why you're standing here today. That's why you're here with this variance. But Bobby, I wouldn't mind you weighing in on that a little bit, because we did do that on East-West, and I don't remember all the details, but there was some consideration that it was going to just run off if it was impervious. There was going to be a consequence either way, but what Ron is talking about here is that really you create an environmental issue right there on that site, as opposed to dealing with it, I guess, through some other process. But I'm not the expert. Tell us what you know.
Well, if if you asphalt the lot, what leaks out of the trucks goes straight into the storm. Doesn't have a chance to sink in. It'll wash it straight in. I always look at the proposed use. For this particular case, let's say he was going to put a paving company in there, and he's going to be constantly loading and unloading tractors in the back. It makes no sense to put asphalt on it because it's going to be torn up every single time he loads a tractor. And gravel is easy to repair. But I can see it both ways. It just depends on what the proposed use is going to be, that you need to weigh that, because it costs a lot more to repair an asphalt parking lot than it does a gravel one.
Okay. All right, does that help you at all?
Yeah, it gives me another, you see what I mean? That's why these aren't so easy.
Well,
right?
the use though, in this, I understand what you're saying, because if it was going to break it up, it's going to end up in that site anyway. It's not going anywhere.
Well, you know, any kind of contaminants that leak out of a truck on an asphalt lot, part of the stormwater manual requires you to catch the first 1 inch runoff. That's where the contaminants are, and they go straight in the pond.
Okay.
But it's a double-edged sword either way you go with it.
Is that better dealt with by it going straight into the pond?
Probably a faster way to deal with it, yes.
And
As
you
if
don't
it were
have the
soaking in
long-term
gravel, it'll just
issues.
take longer to do that.
Sure. Okay, Mr. Carter.
Does this one have a pond? Does this have a pond?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wasn't addressing this particular one, but I wanted to address the first variance, which requires no more than 50% of the required parking in front of the structure, whereas 100% is proposed. What's the point of only allowing 50%? I've seen businesses that, like Walmart, you know, everything's out front, so.
Sure. I think and again, I didn't put this into the code or anything like that. I inherited this. But my thought here is the reasoning is probably tied to the fact that we're trying to reduce the amount of vehicles that are actually seen. You know, if we were to have a situation where we are looking to have a more walkable town and things of that nature, then it oftentimes makes more sense to have the building closer to the roadway than having a sea of parking lots in between the actual building and where the pedestrian infrastructure is, which is the roadway.
Yeah, I think the issue, Ron, though, for me on this one is that this is not a retail or restaurant use in a retail or restaurant corridor. This is off a largely or all industrial road serving, you know, this is not the general public, and it goes to the gravel yard too. The general public is not generally visiting this facility. This is employees, subcontractors, or other persons who are stakeholders in there directly, not necessarily the public at large. So I don't, you know, considering the use, like Bobby said, for this purpose, I don't really see why we have to, why it makes sense to enforce or not to vary from that, considering the use. Again, if this were a Dollar General or something like that, then I could, and it was off a road where there was more, traffic, sidewalks and stuff like that, pedestrian use, then I could see the merit. But I don't see that here considering the use. And the same way with the gravel. I mean, the argument that, you have to chase down the owner in order to repair the gravel lot. Well, this is, again, from what appears to be from this site plan, to be a private gravel yard that's not going to be used by the general public. So if they have issues with their gravel drive, then that's on them because that's their usage. So I don't, again, if we were talking about, some downtown or even a restaurant retail corridor, then I would think differently. But
and I agree with you. I think I approach things from a why can't they do it? And I feel like maybe most of the time the council is like why should they do this, or why can't they do this in reverse? So it's like,
well, I just go back to when we originally gave the 20-foot variance on the same property back in April. One of the rationales was that everyone on this road are all similar uses, all similar, developments.
Same zoning.
Same zoning, and they are all. I think most of these properties are actually vacant. So, as far as I remember, so everyone is, if they're buying in or leasing into this, then they know what they're getting into. Versus again, a restaurant and retail corridor or downtown where it is going to be more widely used by the public.
Okay, I still had,
Mr. Carter.
on the second variance, a 20-foot drive is required, whereas a 10-foot is proposed. Why is a 20-foot required? And how do you get all the vehicles in the front if you're going to only have a 10-foot driveway? I mean,
So the 20-foot drive entrance is for queuing. So being that we have a really small parking lot that we're talking about here, and there's one entrance and one exit in and out, vehicles would essentially be queuing into the loading area. Essentially, they have a very large loading area that's on the opposite front yard around, since it's a corner lot. But there's not much distance there before you hit the right of way, and you're basically into a parking maneuver space of some form, either a loading space or the intersection between where the L in the parking lot comes around, and then the drive entrance is the other leg of that. So the additional space could be helpful on site if you're going to have trucks entering and exiting the site. If you're a car that's parked in the front parking lot and you have to wait to get out because a truck might be either blocking that space or blocking that area, that's a reasonable concern and consideration.
What's the length of a car, right?
Let's see.
Well, it's more than
car is
10 feet.
About 10
It's
feet.
more than 10 feet. So, I mean, this is not even long enough for a car. This drive's not even long enough for a car. I mean, the proposed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get the applicant up. So, would you like to come up and say anything? And so, folks, let me just say while he's coming up that this is a small room, and I know this is riveting conversation, but if you could just not talk to each other because it's very distracting in here because I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing.
Can I hand you all my pictures and?
I don't know, Larry. What do they look like? Come on, bring it up here.
Mayor, are
Come
we
on.
able to put up
Will
a
you do that
site
front?
plan that
Do we have a site plan to put up?
That's all one package, each one of them. Each one of them.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right, give us your name and address for the record. And
I'm Larry Boggs, 71 Garth Road, Carrollton, Georgia, and I said this the last time I addressed you. I wondered what would happen if I got annexed into the city of Villa Rica and the post office had to have a Carrollton address in the city of Villa Rica. That's how close I am to the city of Villa Rica.
Okay.
All right. Y'all, the variances are really. I just finished this building on lot. This is 106 Boggs Road, or lot 1. And I'm trying to duplicate the same construction on 108, which is, this is the one existing here. 78 Highway is right here.
Yeah.
78 Highway.
Larry, let me get you to back up to the mic just enough so we can hear you, and then address this way, okay?
Okay.
Not the audience.
All right, but 78 Highway is here. This 106 is finished. We just finished it. We want to duplicate the same looking building as I just brought you a picture of that. Now, the 20-foot setback change is very important because we don't have sewer over there, and there's not very many employees that stay in this office. This company has some big clean-out trucks that go all over Atlanta, and we use them right here in Villa Rica to clean out the sewer manholes in major hotels and this kind of thing. There's not but about 4 big trucks, but they'll all go into this parking lot. The only thing about the little parking area that I'm asking to have gravel is not important, y'all. The only thing that's really important in my whole thing, or three things, is basically the 20-foot, because if you'll notice at the top of that drawing up there, that's my septic tank line. That's the only area I can put a septic tank, is that area right at the top on the left-hand side behind the building. In a septic tank line, you've got to put one septic tank in all the lines, and then you've got to have enough land. If something happens and fails on the first septic tank, you got to have enough land to do another septic tank right there. That's all the land I have right there that the Douglas County Health Department will approve. And if I move that back 10 more feet, I'm going to encroach on part of this. That's very important, y'all. We've got good tenants that want this building. We're ready to go. So that's very important. The other thing is that, y'all, if you'll notice at the back of the building now, to comply with the ordinance, I've indented 2 foot in. Okay, now can you imagine, people driving a forklift inside a warehouse with boxes and everything on top of the warehouse? They can't see behind from where they're sitting on the forklift. They're running up and down trying to load stuff out and stack stuff high. What if you had a protrusion out 2 foot in the warehouse and you hit this thing? You're going to tear the whole protrusion out. I don't see any reason for that. I don't know why we have an ordinance that goes into the warehouse, in the middle of a warehouse, 2 feet, because it is a danger. It is a danger for the stacking of the pallets, and it's a danger for the forklift driver. And the third thing is basically that we feel that the gravel is not that important, but the parking lot, the people that lease these buildings, they have their offices in the front. That's the guy that runs the business. He has his office up front. He wants all the employees to park their cars in the front and not have parking in the back, because he doesn't want people picking up that screwdriver or that electric drill and going out and putting it in his car, or either better equipment than that, putting it in his car. He wants them, when they leave work and do a time clock or something, they want it to come out the front door. So that's the reason I need all the parking, the personnel parking, and the cars and everything in the front of the building, not half of them in the back. So I think that's the main thing right there, is people need to come through the office that they'll know they're not picking up stuff and walking out with it, I think. But those two things, the offsets, the 10-foot back set, the 10 foot off the street. See, this building here is 10 foot from the right of way. And I think it's an attractive building. It's an asset to the city of Villa Rica. And I don't know why we want to go to 20 foot when it's not really have to do it. And it'll encroach on my septic tank line. And the protrusion in the warehouse is 2 foot. And I think if anybody has ever driven a forklift, then you realize that you have boxes in front of you, you can't see too far around you. So it's better not to have anything that could be an obstruction. So, but the gravel parking lot in that little bitty area I have right there, that's only for equipment. That's, if he wants to store some equipment outside, then he's got about a 25 by 30 foot area. So that's not, the other 2-3 things are very important for us to get this customer.
You're saying that gravel area could be concrete? There's no reason?
Yes, sir. That kind of.
It's a small gravel area.
Really important. The 10 foot to the 20 foot is important. It'll affect my septic tank. I think that the 2 foot protrusion into the warehouse is a detriment to anybody driving a forklift or anything else.
But
Yes, ma'am.
you all resolved that, right? That's not one of the variants being requested anymore, correct?
Because of the redrawing of the 2 foot inset. So if he took that away, then it would be a variance request again.
Yeah, Larry, all they're really talking about here is the drive, the 10-foot from the 20, the small gravel parking area, and the 50% parking lot. Okay, are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
I
Let me
appreciate
just
your time.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
very
Well, hang on just a second. Counsel, you have any other questions for Larry? All right, Ms. McPherson.
Yes, Mr. Boggs, could you address the issue to having that 10-foot drive and any problem with getting vehicles out? Is there any big trucks there or problem? I know it's not a problem as far as getting into traffic. That's part of the reason the ordinance exists. Cars get out there and get in traffic, but this has a few buildings and it's a dead-end road, so you're not pulling out onto 78. But is there a loading, unloading issue that would be a problem with getting cars out of that 10-foot instead of 20-foot drive?
If you see the dark part, that's the truck entrance, and the doors into the striped area for your map here is on the end. The parking is the striped area right in front of the office part of the building. There's no big trucks going on there at all. No big trucks will be in the front of the building.
Okay, so the employees, that's
Right
where you
there,
want the
yeah. $10-foot,
they would be here.
Right.
The trucks are coming in here.
Coming in here, they'll come down like you go on down south, down this way, and then back right into the warehouse.
Okay,
That's
all
what they're
right.
doing. There's no trucks in the front of the building.
Okay, that
And no
answers
trucks-
it for me.
no trucks
Thank
in
you.
front of the building.
All right, okay. All right, thank you. You have another question for him?
I have a question for Larry. Okay, so Mr. Boggs, it's my understanding that the 2-foot, the variance request for the width of the 2-foot deep that you're talking about,
Yes, sir.
it's my understanding that that is not an issue anymore, that we're not deciding on that because you've submitted the site plan showing the recess on there.
I don't
Are
want
you-
to have to do it. I don't think it's good. I mean, I'll build it this way. I just want to satisfy everybody concerned. But to me, it's not conducive to a warehouse. I don't know why, because it's backed up to nothing but the retention pond. There's nothing's going to be behind this, so nobody's going to be looking at the rear of the building particularly.
Okay, so I guess my thing is, we were told this was withdrawn, but it's not, he still is desiring it.
Well,
so-
That's not
I
true.
will-
It is withdrawn
Okay.
because he submitted a new site plan for it.
Yes,
Can't change it right here, Mr.
Okay,
Boggs.
yes, sir.
Just we're
was the ultimate
confusing what
question
we're
I was
dealing
gonna
with here. All right, let me get you to just hang on over there. Maybe I need to do a public hearing. I appreciate it, and then we'll go from there, okay? All right. So, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against these variance requests? Anybody? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion. Let me come back up, staff. I just want to ask a question because you got my attention. I haven't looked at this, Larry, in fairness, and I'm sort of sympathizing with some of this. One of the problems I always have is variances, because I figure if we have to do variances, we probably should modify the code. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't do it, of course. But I do have a question about the septic tank. We have not been we've not been allowing septic tanks for years now, but is that only on residential?
I'd have to defer to Bobby on that.
It's the distance to the manhole? So it's just not possible. I hear him talking.
What's the distance available, Mayor? It's about a mile away from this place.
Okay, all right, that's pretty significant. Okay, that got my attention when you started talking about that, because typically we would not be entertaining a septic tank situation inside the city limits. But in this case, I guess that's a significant hardship. Okay, council, do you have any questions for Ron at this time? All right, Ms. McPherson.
Ron, I know this one isn't on here, so I don't know if we're going to have to modify addressing some of these and coming back on the fourth one that was withdrawn, that seemed to be withdrawn under duress. And that is, I need to make those people happy, so I'm going to spend more money and take risk in order to get them to accept it. And what I need to know is that 2-foot intrusion on a 90, okay, so if we have a 90-foot long building, and correct me if I'm saying any of this wrong, we require this 2-foot projection. Is it all aesthetics?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're going to charge and we're going to make industrial people jump through these hoops. Okay, then that's my reason for not having a problem with that one. It's all aesthetics, and on this case, it's on the back of an industrial building. So he's withdrawn it. My question will be, but he only did that because, not because he wanted to. He felt like he had to do it maybe to get a yes from us. So is there a way that we can address these and come back on that one that was withdrawn? Because I don't think we can reintroduce one that was withdrawn.
No, so let me try to clarify that just a little bit because, and I don't mind somebody else from staff chiming in, but on everything that comes before the city at the staff level, there is a process that the applicant goes through. They give a little, the city gives a little. Staff will make different recommendations based on what the negotiation process is. It's not duration, it's not duress, I'm sorry. It's not duress, it's part of the normal process. And it wasn't to get this body to agree to it, it was to get staff to agree to it. They could have bypassed staff and came here without that. This was to get the staff to agree to it, and that's how that happened. It wouldn't be to get this body to do it. And I would say that happens in every single application and in probably, I mean, any number of times in that process. So I think that wouldn't be fair to say that that was just a duress. That's a negotiation that goes on.
Well,
So does anybody want to chime in on that? Because, I mean, that's just
Yes.
sort of, I wouldn't want anybody to feel like that's how this process goes. I mean, other than the fact that it's the normal process.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. So when somebody comes in and they do not meet the ordinances, then, you know, you present the ordinance to them, and then they can make adjustments to meet that or apply for the variance. There's really not a distress in it. So we got this whole zoning ordinance book. It's not up to Ron or I to look at that and say, well, we don't agree with this, so we're not going to abide by that. So we abide by the ordinance, and we make recommendations like, yes, if you did this, this would suffice that ordinance, right? Or you can go to council and present your case, and the mayor and council, and then let them grant the variance if they see fit. And that's all we do. And we do try to help the clients, the people with any knowledge or advice that we got that would meet the intent of the ordinance, but we can't.
And
go
I think it
beyond
would
that.
be fair to say that you don't speak for the council, you don't speak for the mayor.
Absolutely not.
And if they come here
Right.
and get denied, they're going to be denied for a year.
Yes.
So
right.
working with staff is very beneficial
Yes, it
to the
is.
applicant
It is.
in every case.
Right. And
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Okay, what is the purpose of this little 2-foot indention?
I could not, it's aesthetics that somebody, that we did not write the ordinance, that put it in the ordinance. Alls I know it's in the ordinance, and therefore we hold people accountable to it, yes.
Tracy,
My personal opinion on it would not make any difference.
so Tracy, he's presented us with pictures of 106 Boggs Road, which looks to be fairly new construction. Do you know about how old this is? Ballpark?
That.
Huh? Say, okay.
Yes.
Because when I'm looking at the site plan for the 108, I don't see any I'm assuming the site plan will be a fairly accurate as-built. I don't see any indenture there for this one. So I don't know.
That is correct.
So how did we not catch it or something? And
That is correct.
okay. So, all right.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right, yeah, Ms. McPherson.
When I use the term duress, this is what I mean. Somebody comes before us and they know they're going to have to they have to ask for variances. So you said there's a back and forth. We give a little, they give a little. The only difference is that every time they have to go back and change their plans, it costs them money. All right? And time is money, but they also know that if they don't work enough with us and they get denied, you just said, and this may sound a little crass, they're basically screwed for a year. They can't come back for a year with this if we say no. So there can be some duress with, I got to make this work and get these people to agree with me, whether it's staff, and make it acceptable to them, because if I get denied, I'm in trouble. So that's where I see the duress and the fact that it costs them money every time they got to go back and get somebody to redraw something. So that thing's been withdrawn. I don't know how we're going to handle this, but we just had an applicant get up and basically say, well, I didn't want to do that. If you're driving a forklift, I can see why it's really a problem inside a building. And we have an ordinance which may make a lot of sense in certain areas aesthetically. And that's why we have variances, because there are times where it may not be practical, and we see a reason for it. And in this case, I don't see why the aesthetics matter, and unless somebody can dispute what he said about forklifts and driving around in a building with a 2-foot projection off the walls. And you did speak to it some, Tracy. Unless you can convince me of that, then I'm like, well, then why are we demanding it of them? Yes, we have an ordinance, but in this case, it's not practical. That's why we have variances. It's hard to fit everybody in a cookie cutter. So I don't know how we're going to handle this, but
I got one
I
more
don't have a
question.
problem
All
with
right,
any
Mr.
of them.
Carter, go ahead.
Okay. This one that he withdrew, the section 9.04, can he still come back and apply for that?
He can still apply as long as the city council does not take that particular variance up tonight.
Okay, so it's been stricken from here
Yeah,
anyway.
I don't think you can take it up tonight if he's withdrawn and it's
No,
not before
right.
you.
He's saying.
I guess that's the question.
I think we're kind of saying.
Well, we're saying the same thing. All right, Mr. Barber, you got something? Okay. Yeah, no. So we're not going to take it up tonight, and he can apply for it, but we're saying the same thing. Okay. All right. Okay, I need to move on. So does anybody have a motion?
Yeah.
All right, let's start.
Let me get to the right meeting, because I'm comparing what we did on the work session. Well, you go ahead.
I'll take the
Go
first
ahead.
All
one.
right, go ahead.
Since there's 3 parts to it here.
Okay.
I'm going to move that we do not deny that we approve the variance request from Benchmark United Incorporated, Douglasville, Georgia, for Section 7.03C of the Rica zoning ordinance to provide 100% of the required parking in front of the primary structure.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. I'll entertain a second motion.
You going to take it, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, if I can get down there, my computer's slow, but.
Well, there's 3. Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Okay. Number 2, I'll move to approve the variance request from Benchmark United Incorporated of Douglasville, Georgia, from table 7.5 of the Villa Rica zoning ordinance to provide a 10-foot drive entrance length.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to approve the variance request from Benchmark United, Inc. of Douglasville, Georgia, from table 7.5 of the Villa Rica zoning ordinance to provide a 10-foot drive entrance length. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. McPherson. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, Mr. Montahan.
I move to approve the variance request from Benchmark United, Inc. of Douglasville, Georgia, from Section 7.025 of the Villa Rica zoning ordinance to provide a gravel parking surface.
All right, have a motion to approve the variance request from Benchmark United, Inc. of Douglasville, Georgia, from Section 7.025 of the Villa Rica zoning ordinance to provide a gravel parking surface. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion?
I would just say, maybe I need to add to that motion, as indicated on the site plan. It's not a general gravel parking for the rest of it, but just what's indicated on the site plan.
Okay, clarification. Mr. Carter, will you second that?
Yes, second.
Clarification. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, so we'll move on to the second one. I would just say that I don't have any heartburn over any of these, and I haven't had any heartburn over it, and I can see it. But what I would say is that it's still that staff should not read from this that they should offer these variances without bringing them to council. the council will still have to look at these variances, okay? It sounded like maybe
Absolutely.
there was a suggestion that you could just do that. Let's just be clear that that's not the case. If there is a need to modify these ordinances, maybe you'll want to propose those changes, okay? All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to C3, VA-11-22, Buildmore Enterprises Services LLC, 818 White Street, front and rear yard setback. This is a variance request. There'll also be a public hearing. Ron, please introduce this item.
Yes, sir. The applicant in this case, Buildmore Enterprise Services, Jeff Camp, is requesting a 31-foot front yard setback, whereas 35 feet is required in the R2 zone, and a 12.75-foot rear yard setback, whereas 15 feet is required. The applicant is looking to construct a single-family home on the parcel. The parcel itself is considered a corner lot, being that there's an unnamed street on the west side of the property, and on the east side of the property is a north-south running sanitary sewer easement. This is the same developer that's also developing the adjacent parcel, that's Gold Point Development, that was approved last year, I want to say, or 2020. So he's ultimately looking at keeping the same scale and I guess aesthetic as the surrounding or the neighboring property that he's developing. So that's why he's requesting these variances. So we've recommended approval for the front yard and the rear yard setback variance.
Okay, so these are staff recommended approval. Are there any questions from council at this stage? All right, Ms. McPherson.
Ron, this is in my ward, and White Street, there are some parcels that have been a real concern on that street. Would you mention what is sitting there right now where this house is going to be built?
Yes, from my drive-by at least, I saw a mostly wooded lot with an abandoned structure of some form that's on it. It looks partially demolished. All I could see was really pieces of a roof, essentially, that's still there.
So then these setbacks, these variances that we're giving for the setbacks, the reason you would recommend them is they're consistent with what's already in the neighborhood and what was previously there. Does that make sense?
I would say that there's a
accurate?
bona fide hardship to this particular property because of the sanitary sewer easement that's on the east side of the property and the
Okay,
unnamed
that's
street on
right.
the west.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else got questions for Ron at this stage?
Ron.
Okay, Mr. Montahan.
So we've already platted Gold Point. This is not going to be part of that neighborhood, is that?
That's
or it's
correct.
just, okay, so it's not going to have
It's just an additional
HOA
lot
or
they
anything like
picked
that?
up.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Okay, Ron, let me do is the applicant here? Oh, Mr. Fowler, come on up. Give us your name and address and.
Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 49, Douglas Hill. Mr. Mayor, may I?
Absolutely,
have the
go
drawing
ahead.
of the house?
We started that earlier tonight.
This is the
It's a
house
bit
that's
unusual.
supposed to be built, plus the site plan. I'll show you the reason for the variance. This house is consistent with what's being built next door, a 15-lot subdivision that was previously approved. That house is estimated to be sold for somewhere around $250,000 to $275,000. The property is at 818
Is that
White
mic on,
Street.
Joe? I can barely hear you.
Thank you. Property's at 818 White Street. It's to the south of White Street, as you can see on the plat. The lot next door, as already has been mentioned, has already been approved for the 15 lots that will be under construction right away. The normal setback is 15 feet from the rear. We're asking for 12.75. It's actually within what it could have been approved administratively. The front normally is 35. We're asking for 32.2 foot setback. The picture of the house is there. We ask your approval. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Joe. Does anybody have any questions for Joe? Okay. All right, thank you, Joe. We might in a minute. All right, I'm going to do a public hearing on this. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this variance? You, sir? Okay. Sir, if you'll come on up, give us your name and address. I'll get to everybody. Give us your
Hello.
name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Jeff Camp, 8720 Rose Avenue, Douglasville. So was the developer of the 15 lots next door.
Okay.
So the old house that was previously on the property encroached on the property lines also. So we had demoed that old house, and the group that's buying the lots next door is also buying this lot, or interested in buying this lot, pending I can get this variance tonight. So,
Okay. Are you the applicant?
yes, yes,
Oh,
sir.
okay.
Yep, I'm Bill Moore. Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the
So-
consideration. Thank you.
So, Joe, you're representing him? Is that right? Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this variance? Ma'am, would you like to come up and speak?
Probably could, if they wanted to.
Ron, will you adjust that mic for her? I like your shirt. I'm gonna have to get me one of those. Wildcats, Billerica Wildcats. Let me get you, all right. Let me get you to give us your name and address for the record,
Okay,
and then we'll be happy to hear from you.
okay. My name is Sarah Caldwell,
Okay?
but my address that where I stay is at 119 Cleghorn Street. But the property that they're talking about over on White Street, my parents owned that property, and that would be 820 White Street. And according to the paperwork that I have received, it's showing that they're talking about my mom and daddy's property, because they are landlord 162, and that's what they on this paper I have here. That's the one they said they're claiming. They're talking about. So our house is still standing. And you know, we're not trying to sell it or nothing. We're trying to keep our property, but we cannot have garbage service because the people across the one across the street. Because see, I have a map and everything, and the one across the street, which is at 820B, has the road blocked right there at our property, and we cannot get the garbage people to go in because the road is blocked. But I was trying to see, why were they saying the landlord is 162 when that is our property and not the, and it's 820 White Street.
Okay. Would you,
No, see, that's my deed.
It's a 40-acre square. 40 acres. People don't realize that. It's not that.
No, this say 162, and it's our landlord.
Do you have a picture or something you can show us? 'Cause
y'all have a
it sound
plat? Do we have a plat to put up?
It sound like you
Joe, do you have a plat?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
You
That-
see?
I would hate for them to feel like,
That's your house.
Wait, let me see.
This is your house, and this is the property we're talking. That's you, that's this property.
Yeah, I know this is the property next door to my mom and
And
dad's.
we are on this one. That's the one you're talking
So
about.
what
We're
are you,
on this one.
what are you asking to do? I guess that's what we're trying to find out.
But you see what I'm saying, though? 'Cause see, this is ours. This is what the Keaton property that they purchased.
Yeah, we can just make a quick
No,
copy of this.
what I'm saying is with the variance, we didn't understand what you were for land.
The land
Property
line,
that you
the way that it works.
I think she's just confused about which piece of property is ours.
I got you.
Somewhere over the city, so we have a ton of land lots everywhere, but it just moves, it's not specific
Okay.
to each property.
All right.
It would be like a full area.
All right, ma'am, Miss Caldwell, they're gonna get you some copies and kind of show you, what they're talking about, but they're not talking about your property. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with this meeting if you wouldn't mind, and I'll let somebody work with you after, okay?
Okay.
All right. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this variance? Ma'am, would you come on up? I'll let you give your name and address for the record. and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay,
You're not going to tell me that's your property too, are you?
it is, no. No, my name is Lisa Jones. My address is 9401 Connors Road, Villa Rica, Georgia.
Okay.
But the property that they are talking about, it is the Dobbs property, the Shivers property, and the Keaton's property. And the blockage that she's saying, like where they can't get the trucks through, we found out like that was a driveway to both houses, the Dobbs and the Shivers. So it was like theirs is 820 White Street. We was named 820B White Street. Then when I go to Carroll County to the courthouse, it's 824 White Street. But it was all Mr. Keaton's property that my dad bought that little portion of the house. The house that was torn down was Mr. J.W. Keaton's house, where I think this gentleman is getting ready to build his house. So it is 2 more houses there, the Shivers and the Dobbs. So we were just trying to see exactly what's going on out there.
Okay,
That's
well, I think they'll get all that cleared up for you, okay? All right. So is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this variance? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Joe, come back up. Are you sure you're on the right property?
Yes, sir. We've got the deed right here.
Okay, all right, I believe, I just want to be sure. I know how these can get confusing, especially, some of this stuff that's been addressed like this for over all these years, so we'll get it correct.
It is the same land lot, 162.
Yes, sir. Yep, the same land lot. I understand what's going on, but we want to make sure that they understand it too. So, let me just, you said something earlier that got my attention. You said that these could have been administratively approved.
Yes, sir.
Both of them or just one of them?
Both.
Ron, come up. If you're recommending approval on these, I'm just curious, if they could have been administratively approved, why are we here?
Yes, the applicant did submit actually an application for an administrative adjustment, to which we ran through our normal administrative adjustment procedures. At that time, and I can might need Tom to kind of chime in on it a little bit, but at the time, Tom requested for me to get in contact with David Mecklin to do a title search on the unnamed road section to see if that was a way to where they wouldn't have to apply for any relief at all if this is a unnamed right-of-way that we own, and being that we don't have any use for it. So we were trying to go in that direction, not necessarily to decline any of the variances or anything like that, but we needed to be able to do our homework. So we offered them the option to go through the council route. It might be faster than doing the title search and doing it that way.
Okay, all right. Well, that's I buy that. That makes sense to me. All right. So
we have done a title search on that little abandoned road right-of-way, and we cannot find a dedicated road right-of-way to the city, but all of the deeds on all those adjoining properties reference that as being a public road. So it is probably still public road right-of-way that it's not functional, it's not being used. You can't see a road out there right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I understand that. That makes me feel much better about what we're doing here. Okay, council, does anybody have any questions for Ron at this time?
Ron, so
Right,
just
Mr. Montana.
so because that's an unnamed road or that's a public road, that's why this is considered a corner lot, so it has greater setbacks. If it was not a road, it was not a corner lot, would this proposal fit within the standard zoning ordinance setbacks?
The portion of the property that affronts this unnamed road would have had a 15-foot setback. Taking a look here, actually I have it right here. Hold on one second. I have my table here with the setbacks. They would have been required to do a 6-foot setback.
Okay.
Otherwise.
So, okay. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's the only thing that would keep it from, okay.
Okay.
That or the sanitary sewer easement.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Are we ready for a motion? I'll entertain a motion on item 1.
Item 1, I move to approve the variance request by Billmore Enterprises Services, LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia, to provide a 31-foot front yard setback.
All right, have a
Second.
motion to approve the variance request by Buildmore Enterprise Services LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia, to provide a 31-foot front yard setback for Mr. Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a
Sorry.
second from Ms.
Jumping the gun.
McPherson. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that will be granted unanimous. All right, I'll hear number 2.
I move to approve the variance request by Buildmore Enterprises Services LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia, to provide a 12.75-foot rear yard setback.
All right, I have a motion from Ms. McPherson to approve the variance request by Buildmore Enterprise Services LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia, to provide a 12.75-foot rear yard setback, and a second from Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. That'll be granted as well. Okay, all right, thank you. Let's move on to C4, amendment to section 8.20, manufactured homes, contained in the City of Villa Rica zoning code. There'll also be a public hearing on this item. Let's see, Ron, go ahead and introduce this.
Sure. Section 8.20 of the zoning ordinance is our supplementary regulations for manufactured homes. So this proposal is to remove vinyl siding as a permitted exterior material. This is in line with all the changes that we have on the agenda tonight for single-family detached structures, as well as PUDs in our to have the same change to remove the vinyl. So we thought that it would have made sense to keep all of them the same material standards across the board. So our planning commission recommended approval 5-0 on this one.
Okay, and let's see, there's 1, 2, 3. So these are modifications to the zoning code, and the next 4 of these are, or 5? All 5 of
all
these?
5 of them
Okay.
are. Mhm.
All right, and so there are no applicants here. Council, do you have any questions for Ron? All right, Ms. McPherson.
This would apply to all 3 of these. You know, we have 3 different sections of this involving vinyl siding. So here's my question. At one time, I know we were real concerned about cheap, junky siding. I'm sorry, thank you. I turned this off for a reason in between. Some of the siding, right, it breaks down, it's in the sun, practically melts in the heat. And so we were requiring something of better quality. But you used the term, explain to me, price parity. I know where is it? Hardy plank, because I have that on a back patio and how it holds up well. So is price parity, what you're saying here in this background information, saying that you can use these other better qualities for about the same price? And second question, does this have a detrimental effect on affordable housing?
Sure. I'll actually kind of take them in reverse, if you will. The affordable housing in Villa Rica, there's a number of different opportunities, as we know, and we know that our submarket is a lot more inexpensive than a lot of the more in-town kind of neighborhoods and suburbs and things of that nature. When you make a change like this and you remove vinyl siding, which of course this was my step one, I literally started looking to see how much vinyl is for a whole entire house, like say a 2,000 square foot house or something like that, versus hardy plank. And I mean, I'm sure Tracy could probably back me up here, being that this is kind of his industry. There was almost exact pricing across the board. Of course, there's different types of hardy plank and there's different types of vinyl and things of that nature, but almost all of the vinyl products at this point are almost the same cost across the board. It gets a little more expensive depending on the gauge of vinyl, the thickness of the vinyl. But with hardy plank coming down so rapidly in cost, especially over the past 10 to 15 years or so, it is usually and traditionally considered a much better material to use. It's a much nicer aesthetic, usually to them. And they're a more hardy type of material than a vinyl is, which fades and, as you said, melts and things of that nature. So that was kind of our step one, is kind of looking into the price of all of these different things. So when I say price parity, I mean like there's basically similar costs across the board on a specific material.
Thank you, because that's what I was thinking you were leaning towards. So if somebody buys a manufactured house, you know, with the ones where they bring in the walls?
Yes.
Does the hardy plank, it works with this? They can do that? They can use that kind of material and bring in the sections and put them together?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay, let me do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll go back to staff, and this is probably pretty easy. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to approve the proposed amendment to section 8.20 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too.
All right, have a motion for Mr. Carter to approve the proposed amendment to section 8.2 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Montahan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that'll be unanimous. All right, Ron, let's take up C5, amendment to section 9.01 residential design standards contained in the City of Villa Rica zoning code. There'll also be a public hearing on this item. Go.
All right, section 9.01 is very similar to our last change here, but this is specific to single and two-family houses, so we're looking to remove vinyl once again. The Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 as well.
Okay, any questions on this item? All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? Please do not get up. Just kidding. Okay, so seeing none, clearly none, I will close the public hearing and I'll revert back to staff, and I will entertain a motion on this.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 9.01 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to approve the proposed amendment to section 9.01 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Ms. McPherson. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, Ron, you're doing better.
All right.
Let's go C6, amendment to section 9.02 PUD design standards contained in the City of Villa Rica zoning code. There'll also be a public hearing. Go.
All right. This is another change to remove vinyl from our ordinance, but this is specific to plan unit development communities. We obviously have plan unit development communities that are single family, multifamily, et cetera, commercial, and this would go across the board on all of those. So as of right now, in our current multifamily guidelines, we don't allow for vinyl at all. Before today, we only allowed for vinyl on single family and two family homes and things of that nature, manufactured homes. So this plan would apply across the board to plan unit developments.
All right, any questions for Ron? All right, no questions, I'm gonna do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I will revert back to staff, and I'll entertain a motion from council.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 9.02 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to approve the proposed amendment to section 9.02 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Montahan. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that'll be unanimous. All right, Ron, let's go to C7. Amendment to section 9.036, multifamily and single-family attached design standards contained in the City of Villa Rica zoning code. There'll also be a public hearing. Go.
All right. The change to section 9.03C is to address the architectural guidelines as it relates to townhome developments and the distance between them. So the staff went over this subsection again, and the way that it read out was for the distance for if you have no windows at all at 40 feet, 30 feet if it's like bathrooms and things of that nature, and then 20 feet if it opened up to, say, bedrooms or kitchen, etc. So we're just looking to reverse that order around, being that you would most likely want buildings with a kitchen or bedrooms or what have you to be probably further away, particularly bedrooms. And distance between buildings should stay at 20 feet as a minimum for if we have, of course, no window openings at all, being that there's not really a distance consideration there as far as practicality and what rooms are being used for what and the distance between them. So we're just looking to reverse that order around.
Okay, are there any questions for Ron? All right, no questions. I will do a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll revert back to staff, and I will entertain a motion from council.
I'll make a motion, but I want to say thank you for giving us the Planning and Zoning Commission vote on all of these, so it's readily available to see how they voted. I move to approve the proposed amendment to Section 9.03 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached hereto.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. McPherson to approve the proposed amendment to Section 9.03C of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too, and I have a second from who? Who?
Carter. There's from Carter. I didn't say.
All right, Mr. Carter. I thought two people spoke at the same time and they were equal. I couldn't hear. All right, that's Mr. Carter. Second from Mr. Carter. All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, let's go to C8, amendment to section 4.04 and table 4.4 residential lot standards contained in the City of Villa Rica zoning code. There'll be a public hearing. Go, Ron.
All right, section 4.04 contains table 4.4, which is our bulk regulations table. So we're looking to reduce the width of townhome units as a minimum from 26 foot back down to 24 foot, which is where we started. The change came about in April of 2022, but we ended up doing some additional research, and as we laid out in the work session, as far as how we got to the 24 feet, we really just couldn't account for an additional 2 feet for it to be a minimum product. But of course, the door is always open for a developer to come in for wider units if they would like to do so. So the Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 for this one also.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ron? All right. If there are no questions, I'll do a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll revert back to staff, and I'll entertain a motion from council.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to section 4.04 and table 4.4 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to approve the proposed amendment to section 4.04 and table 4.4 of the City of Villa Rica zoning ordinance as attached here too. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. McPherson. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that'll be unanimous.
Thank you.
You did good, Ron. Good job. All right, somebody's ready to go home. I mean, he is right there.
When you said let's move on to number 7, I said let's move on to 600 Lake County Road. And
I
go
got you.
home.
Let's also move on to D1, exterior ballistic vest carriers for VRPD. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the vest. If I can get Vanna Etheridge up to show this off.
Vanna Etheridge.
Vanna Etheridge.
That thing looks tiny.
Can he put that on?
He probably can't. This is a smaller version.
All right,
Like,
go
we
ahead.
had them send us a sample, so
Okay.
that's what
Oh,
we
okay.
did there. So, City Manager Tom Barber challenged myself and Hunter, along with our command staff, several months ago to make Villa Rica Police Department great again. This was one of those things that we needed, or we feel like we need to try to make things good where we get to keep people. We work towards The raise that you guys voted on us, we appreciate that. That was fantastic. Also, the bonus was fantastic. We appreciate that very much. This is one more of those. We had discussed bringing it to you during budget, as Ms. McPherson had spoken about, but there was money available for us to move forward because of our spending, so we went ahead with Mr. Barber's approval to bring it in front of you guys. So we're asking that you allow us to purchase these vests for our officers, along with the pouches that is the next item, and the numbers in front of you. These are the exterior vests that the officers have been asking for, I guess, for the last at least 2 or 3 years. You see most other agencies with them now. This is one of the final things that we have kind of took our time getting done, but we finally are ready to move forward, hopefully. I told the story during the work session about the officer that didn't have a taser. This is what convinced me to definitely move forward with this. These vests are very sturdy. They come with a warranty. There is another choice that's cheaper, but there's no warranty with it. If it messes up, you basically have to replace the shirt and everything every time. This one has a 2-year warranty. Is that correct, Hunter? So we believe this is our best option.
Okay, and the cost is $34,345.90.
Yes, sir.
This is not a budgeted item, but this is about supporting the police department in a way that helps to retain and attract employees, and you feel like you should do this now as opposed to waiting for the budget, because we're a number of officers down as we speak.
Yes, sir.
So, Counsel, do you have any questions for the chief?
No question, but one comment. In our work session earlier today, we discussed this item, and it was found out that they do have money in their department to cover this, so we just have to do a budget amendment to shift the money over. So we're not adding to the budget.
Yes, sir, that's correct. It's,
Yes, sir.
it is not a budgeted item, but there is budget money in the police department's budget to cover this. In other words, we won't be reaching into the general fund for it. Okay, anybody else?
Yes,
All right, Ms. McPherson.
because that clarification is important. Earlier on the consent agenda, we did approve the laptop computers for the ones that are getting old. It also not budgeted, but we have ones in cars that are getting old and not working the way they should, and it's a real safety issue. And the money was taken from the technology fee that's attached to citations. So it's there to be used for technology, and we approve that. And this is where I need the clarification here, because what I don't want to set, I don't have a problem with getting these. I'm fine with the officers having them. My holdback was the fact that it was brought at the end of the fiscal year when we're doing the budget this month, and I don't want us to get in the habit of adding things in to buy at the very tail end of the year all by themselves instead of proposing it this month in the budget and us weighing it against all the things that are being asked for, whether it's the police department or it's the recreation department or whatever department comes in and says, we want 2 more cars. I'd like to see, that's more expensive. I'd like to see their entire budget so we can weigh the value of what they need the most. However, this says the funding source was the general fund, which led me to believe that it's coming out the general fund for everybody, not out of PD's budget. It says general fund, but you just said something different. Which is it?
Well, everything comes out of the general fund, but it's allocated in the budget.
Yeah, but we discussed
It's
it earlier.
budgeted
Yeah, we discussed
within
it
the
earlier.
department. But
It
the
will
general
be
fund
from-
holds all the money.
But yes, but it's all broken up into different
That's right,
departments.
and that's what we said,
Is-
that we would move it within his budget.
Within public safety function.
Yeah.
There's gonna be funds.
It's going to stay in his department.
That's what I needed to know, not the general fund that every other department wants to know where their stuff was that got cut last year, right, to make it fit. That's the distinguishment, that's not the correct term. That's what I needed.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Well, actually, there's only Mr. Momtan left. Do you have anything? Okay. All right. Anybody again? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
I move to allow the police department to purchase Armor Express overt carriers, panels, and trauma plates from Armor Express at a value not to exceed $34,345.90.
All right. I have a motion from Mr. Carter to allow the police department to purchase Armor Express overt carriers, panels, and trauma plates from Armor Express at a value not to exceed $34,345.90. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Momtahan. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? All right, that is unanimous. All right, thank you, Chief.
The other one's the pouches.
I'm sorry. Can we go ahead and take that one? I'll entertain a motion on that one, too. Because that item goes with this item, and we discussed it earlier today.
All right, if you want a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
I move to allow the police department to purchase the patrol equipment pouches from TNT Uniforms at a value not to exceed $5,000.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to allow the police department to purchase patrol equipment pouches from TNT Uniforms at a value not to exceed $5,000. These go with the previous item.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Momtahan. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? All right, that is unanimous. All right, Chief,
Thank
now
you.
you're off. Thank you. Okay, where are we at? David, let me ask you a question just real quick while Jennifer comes up. This executive session, for some reason, I'm not remembering this. Do we need to do that tonight? Okay.
Okay. I didn't remember it either. but-
Okay, I do now. Okay, all right. Ms. Hallman, you're going to give us a financial update. So, is it up? You have the floor.
Are you driving it? Okay, you can drive it. Okay, this is as of June of this year. You can see that our total cash balance is just under, or just a little bit over 29 million, with 9.6 being general fund, water and sewer being 7.1, sanitation and solid waste 240,000, and then we have our Carroll SPLOST for 2015 is 1.1. 2016 Douglas SPLOST is 2.8, and 2021 Carroll SPLOST is 5.8. Next. We had 22 building permits in the month of June for a total year-to-date of 65, bringing in $86,913, and 67 water taps and 67 sewer taps with $100,500 and $268,000. Local option sales tax is still coming in strong for the month of June. For Carroll, on the Carroll County side, we brought in $180,981, which was a 13.9% increase same time period last year. And then in Douglas County side, it was an 8.2% increase, with bringing in $155,173. Hotel motel tax is still doing very well as too. You can see for year-to-date, we've brought in $251,471, which is 40% more than what we brought in year-to-date last year, same time period. Our business activity, of course, we have our water and sewer enterprise fund. You can see total revenue is 12.9, but like I point out every month when we have a one-time revenue source, that includes the $6 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. And then our expenditures are 7.6 million. So our net income is 5.2. So we are losing money in that fund. The reason there's a positive is the $6 million from the ARPA fund. We have had additional expenses this year compared to last year, mainly being in sewer. Salary and benefits, just due to having additional employees, and the increases in benefits was $144,000 more this year than it was same time period last year. Had a lot of maintenance and repair and equipment, which we hope will be cost savings in the future, fixing the various pumps and everything that needs to be repaired. But we have spent $154,000 more than we did last year. Chemicals, $168,000. Lab services, $23,000, and rental of equipment, $22,000. And this is all in additional or more expenditures in this year than it was last year. Our next business activity fund is our sanitation and solid waste. Through June, we've collected $1.1 million in revenue, and we have just about that in expenditures. And the $69,000 in net income, remember $62,000 of that was a contribution from the general fund for the mid-year adjustment that they needed for tipping fees and fuel that they needed to operate on. The last slide is the self-funded insurance, the insurance fund for our health care. You can see the bank balance is just over $1 million, and every quarter, October through December, January through March, and April through May, we had positive savings. In June, we did have where we actually had more expenses than the contributions into the plan of $42,914, but overall, we've had savings of $304,122. And that's it.
All right, council, does anyone have any questions for Jennifer? I'm sure you all had read this before we ever got here tonight. Okay, all right, thank you, Jennifer. All right, Tom, are you ready to give an update? All right, go ahead.
In the area of the projects that we're working on, one of the most significant we talked about this morning. Another one is the effort to develop another water provider, and those conversations continue. I hope that in a couple of months that we're talking about numbers and terms, and that we can get something at least at a conceptual level agreed to by the end of this calendar year. We have hosted or attended a number of meetings since the last time that we met. A couple of them have been pretty difficult. We have not had a good experience with our initial meetings with Douglas County about Lost and SDS. The way in which they've approved that and tried to run that forward has been pretty difficult to fit into. The mayor continues to have a number of meetings with Carroll County folks about the TAD. Sarah and I attended a Carroll Tomorrow Lunch and Learn that featured the Savannah Port Authority, which was really interesting. They are trying to determine if they can build a facility outside of LaGrange that would be connected by direct rail from Savannah that would definitely impact us, because those trucks would travel north to 20 in part, and the question is what that route would be. So there's going to be some real political finagling going on about that decision. That could be several years, 5 years from now, but the plan is going to happen in the short run in order for that to become real. Fall registration is complete. We have 174 registered for football and 93 for cheerleading. Baseball has 128 registrations, softball 61, and soccer 339. So almost 800 kids are signed up for the fall. That is probably not back to where we were pre-COVID, and I'll talk to Tracy and see if we can pull maybe 19, 20, 21, 22 just to see how we're doing in the rebound there. We have a leadership luncheon tomorrow. State Shapiro is the speaker, so I encourage you to come to that. We had a concert Saturday night.
I heard that they are also performing again in Tallapoosa at the end of the year. So if you missed them and wanted to hear them, they'll be in the area again. We had a really, what I think is a significant event in our development efforts. We had our first residential project terminate. So Chapman Homes, who was going to build the townhomes beside First Baptist, got to the end of their option period on the land, and their financing group was not comfortable moving forward with the current economic conditions. So that is the first, maybe the only, maybe not, the first development of those 5,000 units that we've talked about that is, at least for now, no longer in the works. We have several guys that are still trying to get through design. We have very little that is actually in construction, but Walton is almost complete, or is complete. They had an issue with mold that had developed on the first floor because they couldn't get electricity, so they weren't running HVAC, so they had to clean that up. The classroom addition at Villa Rica Elementary has a temporary certificate of occupancy. They've still got a couple of things they've got to do in other parts of the school to be finished, but that's occupied now. And I think most of you noticed the old bank there in front of Publix has now been occupied by a dental facility. So they're complete. Southeast Strands is still not finished. Chippy's out in the industrial park is not quite finished. Arbor Valley on Cleghorn and in the curve there, they have started work on 3 of the buildings. So the plumbing is going in there. South Harbor 2A near the mayor's house, there's 6 houses that are seeing some activity. Jeff Camp, we talked about today, out there on North Dogwood. He has a couple of houses in his development that are getting cranking. So we're starting to see a little bit of actual construction as opposed to all the engineering and then the grading. We have another issue coming up in the next meeting. If you recall, back in 18, we approved the PUD zoning for Jay Davis, and because he's not making progress on it to any extent, he has to renew it every year. So he's been coming back every fall, and y'all have been approving it. So that comes up next meeting. So right in the middle of all the budget stuff, we're going to have that to talk about. He has done a little bit of clearing of trees back earlier in the year, but there's no progress being made on that project at this point in time. And well, this month is 4 years since we did the zoning. The guys that have an option on the Kroger hole are still working on trying to figure out how to make that project make sense economically, but they have lined up a really healthy group of potential tenants. So staff's working with them, trying to help them get to the finish line on that one. Let's see if there's another one in here.
Explain that property is behind Popeyes.
Yes,
where the
beside
big hole is.
Popeyes, the big hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is extremely ambitious. That's more than 500,000 cubic yards of dirt required to bring that up to the level of the road. So unfortunately, that's the properties we're dealing with. Jay's property is rock. That property needs a ton of fill. Jeff Fuquay's development has really severe topo with a wet weather draw in the middle of it. I mean, the things that people have left to choose from, they're pretty sketch, and they require a lot of help from us or from somebody in order for those to ever develop. So that's it.
All right, Mr. Carter?
On the Walton project, did they get their meter bases that they were looking for?
They did.
So they're on the verge of opening that up.
Tracy's the better one to ask. How close, Tracy?
Yes, sir, they're ready. So they got their 100% from the fire department, and we CO'd it, everything's complete. So phase one is ready to lease out. So they're aggressively looking for tenants right now. Well, they already have a list, but yes. And then we're looking at phase two on some things, so we're hoping to see phase two come in real soon.
And this is the building across from the hospital where the public housing was.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm doing it for the benefit of people that are listening, because when we say Kroger Hole or we say Walton, people are like, well, what the heck is Walton? And so if they can, in their mind, visualize where it is.
All right. Any other questions? Tom? Okay. All right, so we have reached the end of the regular session. We're going to need to go into executive session. David, would you introduce this? Go ahead.
Yes, we need to go into an executive session for the purpose of deliberating upon the appointment of a department head. It's a personnel issue is provided in Georgia Code Section 50-14-3B2.
All right, I need a motion to go into executive session for the purposes stated by the city attorney.
So moved.
All right, I got that from Mr. Carter, a second from Mr. Montahan. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. We're in executive session. All right, we are back from executive session. I will entertain a motion to come back into regular session.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion to come into regular session. A second?
Second.
Second from Ms. McPherson. All in favor? All right, we're back in regular session. Mr. Mecklin.
The motion on the floor is to approve, approve John Bain as the Department Director for the Department of Public Utilities.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion for Mr. Carter to approve John Bain as the new Director for Public Utilities. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. McPherson. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion for Mr. Carter to adjourn.
Second.